When I look back on my life now, it's strange how the smallest moments became turning points. Things I used to brush off, little jokes or looks people gave me, they all led to something I never expected. My name is Ryan, and for most of my teenage years I was the kind of person who tried too hard to fit in. I played sports, laughed at the right jokes, wore what everyone else wore. But no matter how much I tried, I always felt like there was something off about me, something people could sense but I couldn't explain. It started with the word Sissy. I remember the first time someone called me that. I was in 8th grade, standing in the hallway with my backpack half open, fumbling with my books. A few guys from my class walked by, one of them bumping into me on purpose. "Watch it, Sissy," he muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. They laughed as they walked away, and I stood there frozen, embarrassed but also confused. I didn't even know what I had done to deserve that label. At first I told myself it was just a random insult like kids do. But it stuck. Every time I hesitated to join in on something rough or loud, every time I flinched during sports or got too quiet, someone would whisper it again, "Sissy." It became like an echo in my head, something I couldn't escape. I'd go home and stare at myself in the mirror, wondering if there was something about me that made me look weak or different. My mom used to say I was sensitive, but to me it felt like an accusation, not a compliment. I tried to change. I lowered my voice when I talked, learned to walk with a little more weight in my steps, forced myself to laugh at things that didn't even seem funny. But the harder I tried to be like everyone else, the more fake I felt. It was like wearing a mask that didn't fit right, always slipping, always reminding me that I wasn't who I was pretending to be. One day, when I was about 15, I came home from school earlier than usual. My mom wasn't home, and the house was quiet. I went into her room for no reason at all, just wandering. Her closet door was slightly open, and I don't know why, but I stepped closer. Inside hung all her dresses, soft colors, neat fabrics, everything organized perfectly. My eyes landed on this light blue cardigan. I don't know what came over me, but I reached out and touched it. The fabric felt smooth, almost comforting. Without thinking, I slipped it on. I remember the feeling so clearly. It wasn't just about the fabric or the color. It was the first time in my life that I felt calm, like I could breathe without pretending. I stood in front of the mirror, my heart racing, but I didn't see a joke or something wrong. I saw a version of myself that looked right. Like I had found a missing piece I didn't even know I was searching for. Of course, the sound of my mom's car pulling into the driveway sent me into a panic. I ripped the cardigan off and shoved it back into the closet, my hands shaking. My heart was pounding so fast I could barely hear myself think. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that I'd just gotten curious. But later that night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about how peaceful it felt. Over the next few weeks, I kept going back to that feeling. When no one was home, I'd sneak into my mom's room again, trying on little things. A scarf, a pair of flats, sometimes just a bit of lipstick wiped off quickly before she came home. Each time it was like a spark inside me grew a little brighter. But with that spark came guilt. I'd stare at my reflection and whisper, "What's wrong with you?" Because that's what I thought it was, wrong. Things got harder at school. The older we got, the harsher people became. My voice was too soft, my clothes too neat, my mannerisms too careful. The same guys who used to joke around started calling me names more openly. They'd laugh when I answered a question in class or walk past my locker with that same word, "Sissy." It didn't hurt the same way anymore. It confused me. Because deep down I wasn't sure they were entirely wrong. I wasn't like them, but I didn't understand what that meant yet. One afternoon I was sitting outside after school, waiting for my mom to pick me up. My best friend Lily sat down next to me. She'd been my closest friend since elementary school, the one person who never made me feel small. She noticed the way I'd been quieter lately and asked if something was wrong. I hesitated, trying to find the right words, but nothing came out. She just looked at me with that patient smile and said, "You know, you don't have to be what they expect you to be. You're fine the way you are." That night, her words replayed in my head over and over again. Maybe it was the first time someone had ever told me it was okay to just be myself. Still, I didn't know who that myself really was. All I knew was that there was this quiet, growing truth inside me, one that scared me and comforted me at the same time. The next weekend, Lily came over to my house to study. My mom was out shopping, and while we were in my room, Lily noticed the small traces of lipstick on one of my desk tissues. My heart nearly stopped. She picked it up, looked at me, and asked softly, "Is there something you want to tell me?" Froze. My throat felt dry, and for a moment I thought I was about to lose my best friend. But she didn't look disgusted or judgmental, just curious. "I don't know," I said quietly. Sometimes I try on my mom's clothes. It makes me feel peaceful." I waited for her to laugh, but she didn't. She nodded slowly and said, "Then that's okay. Maybe that's who you are." Those words felt like a door opening inside me. For the first time I said it out loud. I liked wearing feminine clothes. And instead of shame, I felt relief. Lily didn't tell anyone. She just smiled and said, "Next time maybe I can help you." I didn't know what that meant at first, but that night I couldn't stop thinking about it. I didn't realize it then, but that was the start of something bigger. Something that would change everything. Because that was the last quiet moment before my truth started to show. Before people's whispers turned into something louder. And before I learned that sometimes, the things people mock you for are the very things that define who you really are. The next weekend, Lily came over again. Only this time, she wasn't carrying her usual pile of notebooks. She had a small shopping bag in her hands and a kind of mischievous smile on her face. I remember asking what was inside, but she just said, "You'll see." I didn't think much of it until we went up to my room, closed the door, and she pulled out a few things. Some light makeup, a simple pink top, and a soft wig that looked surprisingly natural. I just stared at her, my mouth half open. "Relax," she said, laughing softly. "You told me last week it makes you feel calm. So I thought, why not help you feel that way properly?" My heart started racing. I felt nervous, guilty, but also excited. It was like a dream I'd never dared to have out loud. I kept saying she didn't have to do this, but she shook her head and said, "Ryan, sometimes we just need to see ourselves the way we're meant to." I still remember sitting on the edge of my bed while she helped me. The first thing she did was hand me the top. It was light and soft, and as soon as I put it on, I felt that strange warmth again, that quiet comfort that no hoodie or t-shirt had ever given me. Then she applied a bit of foundation and light blush, explaining each step like she was teaching me something sacred. When she placed the wig over my hair and brushed it into place, she said, "Okay, now look." I turned to the mirror, and for a moment I didn't recognize myself. The reflection wasn't the nervous, awkward boy everyone called a sissy. It was someone else entirely, someone softer but stronger in a way I couldn't describe. I just kept staring. My throat tightened, my eyes stung a little, and I whispered, "That's me." Lily smiled. "Yeah," she said softly, "that's you. And you look beautiful." It wasn't about looking like a girl. It was about feeling like myself. Everything about that moment felt pure. For once, I wasn't pretending or hiding. I wasn't afraid of the label or the whispers. I was just real. But real didn't stay safe for long. The universe has this cruel way of testing you the moment you find your peace. That night, after Lily left, I took one last look in the mirror before cleaning up, and I made the mistake of leaving a bit of makeup remover tissue in the trash. I thought I had thrown everything away carefully, but I missed one small clue. The next morning, my mom called me into her room. She was holding that tissue. My stomach dropped. "Ryan," she said, her voice calm but sharp, "why did I find this in the trash?" My brain froze. I could feel the blood rushing to my face, my heart pounding so hard I thought she could hear it. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there, silent. Her expression softened slightly as she added, "If there's something you want to tell me, you can." I wanted to tell her everything, but the fear was too strong. What if she didn't understand? What if she thought I was weird or broken? So I lied. I said Lily was testing makeup and I had helped her throw things out. My mom didn't look convinced, but she didn't press further. She just nodded slowly and told me to make sure it didn't happen again. After that, I tried to bury it. I told myself I could stop any time, that I could just forget the feeling. But it didn't go away. Every night, I'd lie awake replaying that image of myself in the mirror. That calm, complete version of me was still there, waiting. Weeks passed, and I became quieter at school, almost invisible. But people noticed something different about me. Maybe it was because I stopped trying to fake my way through everything. I wasn't pretending to be one of them anymore, and that scared them. The teasing started again, but this time I didn't flinch. One day during lunch, one of the guys, Mark, decided to test me. He'd always been the loudest one, the kind of guy who needed everyone to laugh at his jokes. He threw a comment across the table, calling me a sissy again, saying I probably liked girly stuff. I felt something shift inside me then. Instead of shrinking, I looked him right in the eye and said, "So what if I do?" The entire table went silent. Even I was shocked at what I'd just said. Mark blinked, clearly expecting me to deny it or laugh it off. But I didn't. I just kept looking at him until he turned away. That was the first time I stood up for myself, even without fully knowing who I was standing up for. When I told Lily what happened, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "That's the real you," she whispered. "The one who's not afraid to exist." After that, things slowly began to change between us. We weren't just friends anymore. She became my safe space, the only person who knew the truth. Sometimes after school we'd go to her house, and she'd help me experiment with clothes, hairstyles, and soft colors. It wasn't about trying to be someone else. It was about discovering who I'd always been. We even gave that version of me a name. One day, while she was fixing my hair, she asked, "What do you want to call her?" I hesitated at first. A name. That felt like crossing a line I wasn't sure I was ready for. But then I said quietly, "Riley." Think. Riley feels right. And it did. Every time she said it, I felt something inside me relax, like I'd been holding my breath my entire life and was finally exhaling. But life has a way of finding your secrets, especially when you're still learning how to protect them. It happened one Friday afternoon. We were in Lily's room, listening to music and laughing, when her older brother, Jake, barged in without knocking. He froze. His eyes went from Lily to me, and then to the clothes I was wearing. For a split second, no one moved. Then he smirked. "What's this? You playing dress-up now, Ryan?" I felt my face go pale. Lily tried to intervene, telling him to get out, but it was too late. He had seen everything. He left laughing, but the look in his eyes said more than words ever could. I knew what was coming next. By Monday morning, everyone at school knew. The whispers started in the hallways, then turned into laughter, and then into open mockery. Some people pointed, others just stared. The word "sissy" came back louder than ever, but this time it carried a different edge. Mockery mixed with cruelty. For a few days, I couldn't even bring myself to speak. I stopped looking people in the eye, stopped sitting in the cafeteria, stopped answering texts. Lily tried to comfort me, but I could tell she felt guilty. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I didn't think Jake would." But I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at the world for making something so simple, just being myself, into something shameful. I spent a lot of time alone that week, thinking about everything that had happened. Every insult, every whisper, every moment I tried to hide. And somewhere in the middle of that pain, a thought began to form. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was different. But what if that wasn't something to be ashamed of? What if it was something to live for? I didn't know it then, but that realization would be the start of my transformation, the moment I stopped letting other people define me and started defining myself. The Monday after everything exploded at school felt like walking into a storm. Everyone already knew. Jake had made sure of that. My name was whispered down every hallway, snickered behind every corner. People didn't just say "sissy" anymore. They said it with purpose, like they were trying to remind me of what I wasn't allowed to be. I walked with my head down, headphones in, pretending not to hear. But the truth was, every word hit me like a small stone. Not enough to break me, but enough to bruise. By lunchtime I couldn't take it anymore. I slipped out the side door of the cafeteria and sat behind the gym, hidden by a row of bushes. I remember staring at my hands and wondering how something that felt so harmless could turn into this. I hadn't hurt anyone. I hadn't done anything wrong. I just wanted to be me. But somehow that was the one thing people couldn't accept. Lily found me there later, breathless from running. "You can't hide forever," she said, sitting beside me. Her tone wasn't harsh, it was gentle, like she was reminding me that the world was still spinning. "I don't want to be here anymore," I said quietly. "They all hate me." She shook her head. "No, they don't hate you. They just don't understand you. And people always fear what they don't understand." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think this would pass, that eventually they'd get bored and move on. But it didn't. The teasing turned to shoves. The whispers turned to cruel notes left in my locker. Even some teachers started treating me differently. More carefully, like I was fragile or broken. One afternoon, after a particularly bad day, I came home to find my mom waiting for me at the kitchen table. Her expression was serious. She had that quiet, searching look in her eyes, the one that meant she already knew more than she was saying. "Ryan," she began softly, "I got a call from your school today." My chest tightened. "They said there's been some incidents. People saying things about you. Do you want to tell me what's going on?" I stared at the floor, unable to find the words. I thought about lying again, but I couldn't keep carrying it. I was tired. Tired of hiding, tired of pretending, tired of fearing my own reflection. So I told her the truth. I told her about the names, about how people found out, about how I felt more like myself when I dressed differently. My voice was shaking, and I kept waiting for her to interrupt, to tell me to stop, to say she didn't understand. But she didn't. She just listened. When I finally ran out of words, the silence that followed was heavy. Then quietly she said, "I wish you had told me sooner." I looked up surprised. "I don't fully understand it yet," she continued. "But you're my child. And I don't care how you express yourself. I just want you to be safe and happy." That moment broke something inside me. Not in a bad way, but in a healing way. I had braced myself for rejection, but instead I got understanding. I hugged her tightly, probably harder than I ever had before. Things didn't magically get better after that, but something inside me shifted. I wasn't hiding anymore, at least not from the people who mattered most. I started dressing the way I wanted at home. My mom even helped me pick out a few things. A simple sweater here, a pair of jeans that fit the way I liked. She didn't say much about it, but I could tell she was trying. Still, school remained a battlefield. People didn't stop talking, but I started learning how to stand my ground. When someone whispered or laughed, I looked them straight in the eye. It didn't stop the cruelty, but it changed something inside me. I stopped letting their words define who I was. One day something unexpected happened. During gym class, the coach divided us into teams. I ended up on the same team as Mark, the guy who had started most of the teasing. I could feel his eyes on me the whole time, waiting for me to mess up. And I did. Halfway through I tripped and fell. Everyone laughed, of course. But then something strange happened. Mark didn't join in. He actually walked over, offered me his hand and helped me up. I blinked, unsure if it was some kind of trick. But he just said quietly, "Ignore them. They'll get over it." Then he jogged back to his side like nothing happened. Confused me. Maybe he was starting to realize how cruel it had all been. Or maybe, deep down, he was just tired of following everyone else's lead. Either way, it made me think. Maybe people weren't all against me. They just didn't know how to handle someone being different. Around that time, Lily suggested something that scared me. "Why don't you come to the drama club meeting after school?" she said. "They're looking for new members, and trust me, it's full of people who don't care about fitting in." First I laughed it off. Me. On stage. But she didn't give up, and eventually I agreed to go. That one decision changed more than I ever imagined. The first time I walked into that little drama room, it felt different. Nobody stared, nobody whispered. They just smiled, welcomed me, and handed me a script. I didn't realize it then, but for the first time I had stepped into a place where being expressive wasn't a weakness. It was a gift. The director, a senior named Tessa, immediately liked my energy. "You've got presence," she said after my first read-through. "You're honest. That's rare." Week after week I kept going. I found comfort in that room full of people who wore their hearts on their sleeves. We practiced, laughed, messed up and tried again. And slowly I started to feel free. One day, during rehearsal, Tessa asked if I'd be comfortable trying on a costume that was meant for a female character. "It's just for a scene," she said gently. "But I think you'd bring something special to it." There was a long pause. The old fear started to creep in, but then I thought about how far I'd come. So I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I can do that." When I stepped onto that stage in costume, the room went quiet. I expected laughter, maybe even snickers. But instead there was silence, the kind that feels heavy with respect. When the scene ended, everyone clapped. Afterward, one of the younger actors came up to me and said, "That was brave. You looked happy." And I was happier than I had been in a long time. Because for those few minutes on stage, I wasn't hiding or pretending. I was just being. That night I lay in bed, replaying it all in my head. The laughter, the fear, the applause. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the word sissy. It didn't feel like an insult anymore. Felt like something I had survived. I didn't know it yet, but the play would become more than just an after-school hobby. It would become the stage where I learned to claim my truth and show everyone who I really was. Opening night came faster than I expected. The play was called The Hidden Mirror, and it told the story of someone trapped between two versions of themselves, searching for a reflection that finally felt true. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of it. Here I was, living that very story. I played a supporting role, but my character had moments that mirrored everything I'd been through. Each line felt personal, almost like I was speaking from my own life. Lily helped me with my costume that evening. It was simple. A flowing cream-colored blouse tucked into soft gray slacks, with a scarf that draped over my shoulders. It wasn't extravagant, but when I looked in the mirror, I saw Riley, not Ryan pretending to act, but Riley living a truth she'd hidden for years. Before the play started, I stood backstage, listening to the hum of the audience. I knew people from school were out there, some of the same ones who had laughed at me. My palms were sweaty, my heart racing. For a moment I thought about running. But then I caught my reflection in a backstage mirror. The soft lights made my face glow gently. I smiled at myself. I whispered, "You're not hiding anymore." When it was my turn to go on stage, everything around me disappeared. The lights were bright, almost blinding, and for a few seconds I couldn't even see the audience. All I could hear was my own heartbeat and the sound of my voice. I poured everything I had into those lines, every ounce of fear, pain, and hope I'd carried for years. By the time the final scene ended, the silence in the room was thick. Then the applause started, loud, genuine, and full. It echoed through the small theater, bouncing off every wall, wrapping around me like warmth I'd never felt before. I bowed, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel like a joke. I felt like someone worth being seen. After the show, people came backstage to congratulate the cast. I expected awkwardness, maybe fake smiles. But what I got instead was something else. A few classmates approached me, the same ones who used to whisper in hallways. One of them, a quiet girl from my science class, said softly, "You were amazing. Seriously. You looked so confident up there." Stunned me. For so long I'd been defined by their cruelty, and now those same voices were speaking kindness. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled and said thank you. When my mom came backstage, her eyes were full of tears. "You were wonderful," she said, hugging me tight. "I've never seen you so alive." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every moment, the lights, the applause, the faces. Something inside me had changed forever. It wasn't about pretending anymore. It wasn't about escaping who I was. It was about becoming whole. The next day at school, I braced myself for the usual whispers, but they never came. People still looked sure, but it wasn't the same. Some even smiled. Others avoided eye contact out of guilt, maybe realizing what they had done. But I didn't need their apologies. I'd already found what I needed: self-acceptance. Still, there were moments when the old fears crept back in. During lunch one day, I overheard two students talking about me. "He looked different," one said. "Not in a bad way, just different." I could hear the hesitation in their voices, the confusion of trying to understand something new. That's when I realized something important: people don't have to understand you for you to exist. You don't need permission to be yourself. You just need courage. Over the next few months, things began to shift. I started dressing in a way that felt natural, not forced. Sometimes that meant softer colors, sometimes it just meant comfort. I started using the name Riley more often, first privately, then online, and eventually with friends. It felt like shedding an old skin, one that had grown too tight. Lily and I grew even closer. She was my anchor, the one person who had seen me before I saw myself. One evening we were sitting at our favorite cafe when she looked at me and said, "You realize how far you've come, right?" I laughed. Sometimes I can't believe it. A year ago, I couldn't even say my name without feeling afraid. "And now?" she asked. "Now," I said, smiling, "I'm learning to live it." But life has its tests, even when you think you've conquered your biggest ones. Around that time, I got called into the principal's office. My heart sank as soon as I walked in. The principal and a counselor were sitting there, both wearing the kind of expressions that tried too hard to look kind. "Riley," the principal began, using my chosen name, which surprised me, "we've noticed some students still making comments. We want to make sure you're okay and that you feel safe here." I nodded, though part of me felt uneasy. I didn't want pity. I wanted normalcy. I wanted to just be. When I left the office, though, I realized something. For the first time, they used my name, the real one. And that small gesture meant more than they could ever understand. Slowly, the school atmosphere changed. Not overnight, but gradually. Teachers corrected students when they said my old name. The guidance counselor invited me to speak to younger students about respect and individuality. It terrified me at first, standing in front of others again, but when I started speaking, the fear melted away. I told them about the word Sissy, about how it haunted me, and how I'd carried it like a scar. But then I said, "That word doesn't own me anymore." Never did. I gave it power when I believed it was an insult. But now, it's just a word, one that I outgrew. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. Some of the same faces that had once mocked me were clapping. It was surreal. After the assembly, a younger student, a quiet boy who reminded me of myself, came up and whispered, "Thank you." Get called names too. It helps knowing someone like you didn't give up. That one sentence made everything worth it. In that moment, I understood that my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to anyone who had ever felt different, misunderstood, or afraid to show who they were. My pain had turned into purpose. But I wasn't done transforming yet. There was still one person I needed to face: my father. He worked out of town most weeks and hadn't been around much during all of this. My mom had mentioned bits and pieces to him, but I didn't know how much he really understood. When he came home one weekend, I decided it was time. I waited until after dinner, my heart pounding, palms sweaty. He was sitting on the couch reading when I said, "Dad, can we talk?" He looked up, curious but calm. "Of course." I took a deep breath. "I've been going through some changes. About who I am. I go by Riley now." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he sighed and set his book down. "Your mom told me a bit," he said quietly. "I won't lie, I don't fully understand it. But I do understand this: you're my kid. And that's never going to change." Tears stung my eyes. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until he said it. That night, I went to bed feeling lighter than I had in years. The boy who once hid behind his mother's closet door was gone. In his place stood someone new, someone who had fought through shame and fear and come out the other side. But the journey wasn't over. Because living your truth isn't a single moment, it's a lifetime of choosing yourself, even when the world doesn't. And soon I would face my biggest test yet, showing the world that Riley wasn't just a name I used in private but the person I truly was. When I woke up that morning, the world outside was quiet. The sunlight filtered gently through the blinds, casting thin golden stripes across my face. For a moment, I just lay there, not out of fear or confusion but peace. The kind I hadn't felt in years. I turned to look at the reflection in the mirror across my room. And there she was, me, the person I'd always wanted to be. Not pretending. Not hiding. Just existing. My heart didn't race with guilt anymore. My hands didn't tremble as I got dressed. Everything felt aligned. I slipped into a soft pastel blouse and denim jeans, simple and real. For the first time, I didn't need to perform femininity. Just was. I remember stepping out into the street that day, expecting the same judgmental stares, the whispers, the smirks, but none came. Maybe they were still there, or maybe I just didn't care anymore. I wasn't living for their approval. I was living for me. And that realization was heavier than freedom itself. I had spent years trying to prove something to the world, trying to fit into boxes I never belonged in. But now I understood. You can't earn acceptance from people who never took the time to see you in the first place. As I walked through town, a familiar voice called out. It was Eric, the same guy who used to tease me mercilessly in school. My heart skipped for a second, but I didn't run this time. I turned and faced him. He hesitated, looked me up and down, and finally said, "You look happy." That was it. No cruel jokes, no laughter. Just a few honest words from someone who once made my life miserable. "I am," I said simply, and kept walking. And that tiny moment, that single exchange, meant more than all the apologies I never got. A few weeks later, I stood in front of a small mirror at a community event, the first I'd attended openly as myself. The crowd wasn't big, maybe 20 people, but every single one of them was there to share their own story. Different paths, same struggle. As I listened, I realized something profound. Being called a sissy had once been my greatest fear, but now it was part of the story that shaped me. That word no longer held power to break me. It reminded me of who I had been, and how far I'd come. One of the women there, older, with silver hair and kind eyes, took my hand and said, "You've already done the hardest thing. You stopped lying to yourself." I nodded, feeling tears sting my eyes. She was right. The real battle was never with the world. It was always with the reflection in the mirror, and I had finally won. That night, I sat by my window again, the same one I used to stare out of when I felt trapped and invisible. But this time I wasn't hiding behind the curtains. I was sipping tea, legs tucked under a soft blanket, smiling at my own reflection. The air outside smelled like rain, and the city lights shimmered through the drizzle like tiny stars. My phone buzzed a message from a childhood friend who had seen my recent photos online. It said, "I'm proud of you." 3 simple words, but they filled the quiet room with warmth. There will always be people who don't understand, people who whisper, people who laugh. But I've learned something they haven't. Courage isn't loud. It's quiet. It's standing up every morning, looking in the mirror and saying, "I'm still here." It's wearing what makes you feel alive, even when the world wants you to hide. It's living your truth, no matter who calls you names. Sometimes I still hear the echoes of that word sissy in the back of my mind. But now it doesn't sting. It reminds me of my journey, of the scared boy who used to flinch at his own reflection, and the strong woman who rose from his pain. I'm proud of both of them. Without him I wouldn't be me. Without his struggle I wouldn't know freedom. As I look at myself now, I don't see confusion or shame. I see growth. I see resilience. I see someone who stopped surviving and started living. And even if the world never fully understands, I do, and that's enough. They called me a sissy, but that word no longer defines me. It shaped me, tested me, broke me, and rebuilt me. And now, when I think of it, I don't feel small. I feel powerful. Because I'm not the person they mocked anymore, I'm the person I was always meant to be. This is my story. My truth. My peace. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel.